Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. 5 lines from the top. After the Gemara identifies that the Tana of our Mishnah was Rabbi Meir, who said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael that a width of the entranceway of a mavui, if it's less than Daled Amos, even Beis Shammai would agree with Beis Hillel that either a kara or a lechi suffices to adjust the mavui. Now the Gemara discusses Rabbi Meir. Omar of Acha bar Chanino, Galui v'yadua lifnei misha Omar v'hoya ha'olam, she'ein bedoro she Rabbi Meir kamoisoi. That there was nobody greater than Rabbi Meir in his generation. He was the Gadol Hador, and he had a great generation. In fact, his comrades were also Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. Amongst them were Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. And yet the Gemara asks, ma lo kavu halacha kamoisoi. Why wasn't the halacha in most places determined to be like him? Answers the Gemara, shelo yachlu chaveirav la'amoid al soif daitoi. His comrades were not able to decipher exactly what was his ultimate understanding. Shehu oimer al tamei tahor umar leponim. For he said that which is tamei would be tahor. He was able to argue it the other way and say it's tahor and explain himself. Also, al tahor tamei umar leponim. He was also able to say the opposite. That which was tahor, he was able to explain how it could be tamei. And he gave different arguments, which were very convincing. Says Rashi, in Dibra Maschil al soif daitoi, lo yachlu lo hovin be'eze dvorov nechoinim u be'eze dvorov nechoinim. Ein nechoinim. They did not able to decipher which of his words were correct, meaning to say, which was he coming to say was the correct decision, and which was not the correct decision. Why? Shahaya noisin das miyushov v'hagun al ein halacha halacha. His arguments were so convincing on even that which was not the halacha, as if it was the halacha. So they came out to be unclear as to what was the ultimate understanding and the rulings of Rabbi Meir. The Gemara now brings a Brisa Tana. Lo Rabbi Meir Shmoi Ela Rabbi Nehoroi Shmoi. His essential name that was given to him was not Rabbi Meir, but ultimately was really Rabbi Nehoroi. Ask the Gemara, Valama Nikra Shmo Rabbi Meir. So why in the pages of Shas is he given the title of Rabbi Meir? Shehu Meir Einei Chachamim Behalacha, because he illuminated the eyes of the Chachamim in halachic matters. The Gemara now goes on to say, Velo Neharoi Shmo. It's not referring to Rabbi Meir, but rather that which it is cited in the Shas as being Rabbi Nehoroi, that was not his name, referring to the one who was mentioned as Rabbi Nehoroi. That was not his essential name. Ela Rabbi Nechemya Shmoi. He was really Rabbi Nechemya. Va'amrei lo Rabbi Elazar ben Arach Shmoi. Some say it was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. V'lama nikra Shmoi Nehoroi. Why was he called Rabbi Nehoroi in the Shas? Sheman here einei chachamim behalacha. Because he illuminated the eyes of the chachamim with his halachic rulings. Who was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach? The Mishnah Avos in the second parak states that he was the greatest Talmid of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And yet we don't find him very often, if not at all, in the pages of Shas. The Gemara in Shabbos in the 22nd parak, Daf Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Beis, explains that after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai passed away, the Talmidim went to Yavne to reestablish the Beis HaMedrash in Yavne. Whereas Rabbi Elazar ben Arach went to another area, a place where they had choice wine and good waters. And when he said to his wife, maybe I should go where my comrades are situated, she asked him, who's greater, you or them? To whereby he says, I'm greater than them. So she said, stay put, let them come to you. And that was a tremendous mistake that he made. The Gemara tells us, as a result, he lost his learning. He forgot his learning. Whereby the Mishnah Avos teaches us a statement in the name of Rabbi Nehoroi. And it says, Have a goyle lamakom Torah. He himself says, even if you are greater than your comrades, go out to a makom of Torah. That means a place where your comrades are, to be able to learn with them, because you will then be able to sustain your learning, and if not, chalila v'chas, the opposite. Says the Gemara weiter. Omer Rabbi Hai, the mechadan mechavroi the chazis Rabbi Meir meachorei. I was more sharpened than my comrades, because I saw Rabbi Meir from the back. In other words, I was seated behind Rabbi Meir, and I was sharpened by going to his Torah lessons, to his shiurim. V'ilu chazise mekamei havechmechidadno tvei. Had I been able to sit in front of Rabbi Meir and saw his face, the nuances of how he made facial expressions when he taught Torah, then I would have been even sharper. Dirshu says in the pasuk, "V'hoyu einecha royos es marecha," and your eyes shall see your teachers. Says the Gemara, "Vayter Amar Rabbi Abo Amar Rabbi Yochanan Talmid Haya Loy Rabbi Meir." There was a student that Rabbi Meir had, v'sumchu shmoi, and his name was Sumchus. Shahayo oimer al kol dover v'dover shel tuma arboim ushmoine tamei tuma. He was able to say, in regards to all matters of tuma, 48 different reasons for why it is tamei. Va'al kol dover v'dover shel taharo arboim ushmoine tamei taharo. And on every matter of tahara, he's able to explain 48 different reasons for its reason of taharo. So you see the greatness of the Rebbe through the Talmud. Tana, the Gemara brings a brisa, Talmud Vosik Haya B'Yavne. There was a student, a doctor, somebody who was medayik in his learning, who was in Yavne, Shahaya Metaher Es Asheretz B'Meya V'Chamishim Taimim. He was metar a sheretz, even though the Torah says, of course, that a sheretz is tamei. He was able to give 150 different arguments why it should be tahor. Of course, the Torah says it's tamei, but nonetheless, he was able to explain why it perhaps should have been tahor if not for the Torah. Omar Ravina stated, Ani adun v'taharena. I can give a kal v'chomer and metar a sheretz as well. Uma nachash memis umar betumo. Just as a nachash can kill, and by killing either an animal or a person, it's mar betuma, and yet it's tahor itself, because not one of the shmona shrotzim, sheret she'ein memis umar betuma lo kol shekein. One of the shmona shrotzim that is not mar betuma, then certainly it should be tahor and not tamei. The Gemara says v'lohi. It's not even an accurate kavachomen, because maise koitz ba'alma ka'avid. All the snake does is a maise koitz. It's like a thorn, and it ultimately just kills a person. The killing, it doesn't produce tuma, but rather after it's dead, then tuma arises as a result of the dead carcass or the dead body. So therefore, it's not a valid kavachomer. Says the Gemara, Vayter Amar Bi Abba Amar Shmuel. Shalosh shonim nechelku beis Shammai ubeis Hillel. Halalu oimrim halacha kamoseinu, ve'halalu halacha kamoseinu. When Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were arguing, each one insisted that the halacha is like them. Yotza bas kol ve'omra, a heavenly voice emanated and stated, Eilu ve'eilu divrei elokim chayim hein. These and those are the words of the living Hashem. The halacha ki Beis Hillel. However, the halacha is nifsak like Beis Hillel. Ask the Gemara, v'chi me'acha she'elu ve'elu divrei elokim chayim, mnei ma zochu Beis Hillel likboya halacha moisam. If both this and those, meaning if both the halachos are correct, they're divrei elokim chayim, why is the halacha nifsak after Beis Hillel? Answers the Gemara, mipnei she'noichin va'aluvin hayu, because the students of Beis Hillel were noichin va'aluvin. They were savlonim, and therefore it was a siman as a result of this humility that they were great in their Torah learning. Excuse me. V'shoinin divreim v'divrei Beis Shammai. And they also taught the words not only of their own opinions, but even the opinions of Beis Shammai. Take a look at Rashi about 1/4 down from the top of the Amud. Rashi and Dibra Maschil v'shoinin Divrehen v'chdivrei Beishamai. Kishahoyu Beishamai mevin raya lidivreihem min haTorah. When Beishamai would bring a proof for their words from the Torah itself, Beis Hillel mevin raya memikra achar, whereby Beis Hillel would bring a different pasuk. V'hoyu Beis Hillel darshin es hamikro shel Beishamai, and Beis Hillel would darshin the pasuk. They would bring the drasha of Beis Shammai first. Lama ba, why would it come? Meaning, what is the purpose of these words? V'lo haya kal be'einem. They would show it's not light in their eyes. They would give erech and chashivus to the drasha of Beis Shammai. In other words, they would understand it well and they would explain it out. Now Rashi brings example from Maseches Brachos. Beis Shammai oimrim be'erev kol adam yatev yikra b'boiker yamud. Beis Shammai, in regards to saying Kriya Shema, said at night one would lay on his side and say Kriya Shema, and in the morning he would stand up to say Kriya Shema. Shneimar says b'shoch b'chov kumecha, because Beis Shammai explains the words kipshutoi, that when saying Kriya Shema is while lying down at night, and saying Kriya Shema in the morning is while getting up. Ubeis Hillel oimrim kol adam kareh kedarkoi. Beis Hillel would argued and said that a person can say Kriya Shema in any which way. Shneimar says v'lechtecha baderech. Im kain, Beis Hillel then explains out the drush of Beis Shammai. Lamo nemar b'shoch b'chov kumecha. After all, the words seem to say kipshutoi like Beis Shammai, that a person says Kriya Shema lying down at night and standing up in the morning. B'sho, says Beis Hillel to explain, b'sho shederech b'nei adam sheichvin u'b'sho shederech b'nei adam oimdim. It means to say b'shoch b'chov kumecha is not how a person says Kriya Shema, but explains when a person says Kriya Shema. He says Kriya Shema at night, at the time that person is lying down, meaning at night after Tzeis HaKochavim. And a person is to say Kriya Shema in the morning, u'v'shoch b'cho, when people get up in the morning. Going back to the Gemara, v'lo yoid, with the second wide line towards the end, it says v'lo yoid elo shemakdimin divrei Beis Shammai l'divreihem. They would also precede the words of Beis Shammai before themselves. Like we find in the following Mishnah, the Mishnah tells us an incident where they preceded Beis Shammai before themselves. Misha haya roishoy v'ruboy besuka v'shulchana b'toich habayis. Somebody, says the Mishnah, who has the majority of his body together with his head in the sukkah, but the table is inside of the bayis. That means that he's sitting in a sukkah that is adjacent to the bayis, and he's inside of the sukkah, but his table is in the house. Beis Shammai poislin. Beis Shammai says it's possible. Beis Hillel machshirin. Beis Shammai says it's possible because, after all, he's liable to then be nimshach achar the shulchan and then eat outside of the sukkah in the bayis. Whereas Beis Hillel is not concerned about that. Omu Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. The Mishnah then says the following instance, that Beis Hillel says to Beis Shammai, Loikach hayo maise shaholchu ziknei Beis Shammai v'ziknei Beis Hillel levakeres Rabbi Yochanan ben HaCharonis. Did they not go to visit Rabbi Yochanan ben HaCharonis? By the way, so Beis Hillel now preceded by saying the ziknei Beis Shammai together with Beis Hillel went. So that shows the anava, the great humility of the base of Beis Hillel. Umatzu yoishev roishev veruboy besukkah v'shulchan b'toch habayis, and they found Rabbi Yochanan ben Charonis that was sitting. He was roishev veruboy in the sukkah, but the table was in the bayis, and they didn't say anything. So the fact that they were quiet, they were silent, implies that the Beis Shammai was maskim, that indeed it's kosher, and he's yotze yidei chavaso in such a sukkah. Amru lohem Beis Shammai misham raya. From there, you're going to bring a proof. Afhein amru loy. In that incident, the people of Beis Shammai did say something to Rabbi Yochanan ben HaCharonis. Im kach, they said to him, Hayisa noig, if that's how you're noheg, loy kayamta mitzvah sukkah miyamecha. You're not fulfilling the sukkah at all in your lifetime. Some learn that means to say even midyaraisa, while other Rishonim explain that means that he didn't fulfill it in the correct way. Al Kopanim, we see from here that Beis Hillel preceded by speaking about Beis Shammai before themselves in this incident. So again, we see their great humility, which gave him the zechus that the halachas is kamoisam. Now the Gemara explains that here the Gemara is going to explain, says the Maharsha, that the person has to have three different aspects, that he's toiv la-shamayim, he's toiv la-brios, and he's toiv la-atzmoi. Here we're talking about la-shamayim first. To teach you, anybody who lowers himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu raises him. However, if a person acts arrogantly, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu lowers him. So you see, a person has to be tov l'shamayim by being mashpil himself, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu raises him. Kol ha'machazer al gedula barachas min, a person who's going after kavod, then the kavod, the greatness, will then run away from him. V'kol ha'borech min ha'gedula, but if he runs away from greatness, he's not looking for kavod, because he's toiv labrios, gedula machazeres acharov, then the greatness will then run after him. A person who then insists to try to then do things to make him successful when it's not yet the proper time, then he won't be successful. But a person who's patient and proceeds to do what he's supposed to do, ultimately he will be successful because he's toiv la'atzmo as well. Says the Gemara, bringing the following brayso regarding Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Tanu Rabbanan shtei shonim umechzo nechlu Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, for 2.5 years. They argue the following: Halalu oimrim noyach loy la'adam shelo nivra yosem nivra. Those stated that it's greater, it was more noyach for a person to be not created than for him to be created. It was more noyach. Whereas others argue the opposite. That it was more noyach that a person should have been created than not to be created. Doesn't state who said what, but presumably it was Beis Shammai that said that it's noyach that a person should not have been created, then he should be created. And here the Gemara says, Nimnu v'gamru noyach loy la'adam sheloy nivra yosem mish nivra. Ultimately, it was agreed upon that it was noyach that a person should not be created, then should be created. What does it mean over here that noyach shelo nivra misha nivra? Because if a person is going to be created, he has the wherewithal to achieve netzach nitzochim, eternity, in his actions, in his behavior, in the way he lives in his life. And therefore it's kedai, it's noyach, that a person should be created in this world, because he can elevate himself and achieve eternity, which is beyond our comprehension, that a person lives forever and ever with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, not only are the stakes high in regards to then one way, in terms of positivity, in terms of greatness and netzach, nitzochi, but also in the other direction, a person chalila v'chas could fall and become a ruination. So therefore, the conclusion was that so great are the chances of a person falling that it's noyach loy la'adam shelo nivra misha nivra, and everybody agreed to that. However, achshav shenivra, now that a person is created, yefash peish b'maisav, the eitzah is he should then search out his ways. Indeed, he should then look and ascertain his ways to determine if those ways are of the Ratzon of Hashem. If those things are not the Ratzon of Hashem, then he should then desist from doing those things and do tshuva. Ve'amrei lo, and some say, mimashmesh b'maisav, he should examine his ways. Here refers to a greater examination even of those things, those acts that are positive, that are good in totality, but he has within those things also things that are bad and negative, ulterior motives and so on. So it's like compared to a person who wants to then take a garment. So he looks and he sees a bunch of soiled garments. Those he doesn't take. He takes the garment that is clean. But even that's in regards to then yifash peish b'maisav. But even after taking a garment that's clean in general, but he might note that there are certain creases or maybe even a stain that he has to then clean out still, and that's considered to be mimashmesh b'maisav. The Gemara now brings another Mishnah here in regards to the Kaira. The Mishnah focuses on the adjustment of the crossbeam that we know has to extend from one side to the other side of the entrance way of the Mavli. Says the Mishnah Hakara, Sha'amru Rechava K'dei Lekabel Areach. The Kara that they said has to be a width that is going to be able to then Mekabel an Ariach. An Ariach is a stone, the Mishnah will explain now. It's the half size of a regular levena. Says the Mishnah, Rechava K'dei Lekabel Areach. Ariach Chatzi Levena Shel Shloshes Tvachim. The levena is 3 Tvachim. So 3 Tvachim by 3 Tvachim. So here we're talking about half of the width would be 1.5 Tvachim. That has to sit on the crossbeam, which is going to be a full tefach to then mekabel that 1.5 ariach. Says the Mishnah, Daya lekar shetei rechava tefach de lekabel ariach lerochaboy. In order to mekabel the width of a chetzi levena, which is an ariach, then it has to have at least a tefach, so that you'll have 1/4 of a tefach on each side. Ends up being, since the tefach is arba gudalim, it will be 1 gudal on each side, and that would be enough to then situate the ariach on a crossbeam on a tefach wide kara. Now it doesn't have to be in lamaisa; it has to be only in lekoyach that has the ability to then support that. Rechava k'dei lekabel ariach, that which we just said that it has the width of a tefach to mekabel the ariach of 1.5 tefachim. Uberia k'dei lekabel ariach, but it has to be strong enough, again in potentiality, to then mekabel this ariach, this half size levena. Rabbi Yehuda oimer rechava afal pi she'ein beria. Rabbi Yehuda argues and he says it doesn't have to be strong to mikabel in ariach. It has to have the width but not the strength. The Mefarshim and the Mishnah explain because Rabbi Yehuda understands that the kara, the crossbeam, is a mechitza, and therefore to be a mechitza, a halachic wall, it just has to have the ability to then be considered to be going down. As long as it's a tefach wide, then we can say that it's yared v'soisim. Says the Mishnah Vayter, the words of Rabbi Yehuda, Haisa shel kash v'shel kanim, roina sakilu hi shel mateches. Rabbi Yehuda goes on to say that if it's made out of kash, straw, or kanim, or reeds, we view it as if it's made out of metal. In other words, that's satisfactory. Akuma, roina sakilu hi pshuto. If the crossbeam is going to be akuma, it's bent, then we look at it as if it's straight, that's also going to be satisfactory. Agula, if it's round like a pipe, then agula, then roin oisaki iluhi mubas, we'll view it as if it is square. So therefore it's able to mekabel the ariach. The Mishnah goes on to say what's considered to be something that's round, that will also be mubas. If it has a circumference of 3 tefachim when it's round, like a pipe, yesh boy rochav tefach, then it will have the width of a tefach, then it's going to be satisfactory to be the dimension of a kara.